Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 39th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Classic English horror bordering on giallo, but not quite giallo. Body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror adjacent, thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. It all helps to get the word out and bring some much needed love to this little podcast. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated. Enough of all that housekeeping, though, because today I have the privilege of welcoming back for his third appearance, Jose Ruckus himself. Brandon, how the hell are you?
Oh man, I'm super excited to be back on.
This is, I feel like been a little bit of a long time coming, but I think we found a good film. We have this track record of doing the more thought-provoking or more art housey, sometimes more horror adjacent type films.
Yeah,
and
I like to push the boundaries on what can be horrifying, because I'm the kind of person who is scared by more psychological things than I am just like the guy stabbing people.
Yeah.
So I like to push the boundaries on this show a little bit.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that because there are so many fun films like this that, you always get the people that say, oh, I don't like horror movies. I don't like scary movies. And then it turns out that like Silence of the Lambs is one of their favorite films or, perhaps this film. Tonight we're here to talk about this 1973 classic. It's about to turn 50 in October. Don't Look Now, directed by Nicholas Roeg and based on the story by Daphne du Maurier, the author of Rebecca. That's like really all I know her from. But holy shit, this is a film.
It's really something.
Yeah, man. It's been out of print in the Criterion Collection for a few years, and it's about to come back in with the 4K disc in October. So I think
it actually just ran through theaters again pretty recently.
Nice.
Yeah, showing off that 4K restoration. So a lot of people got to go out and kind of re-experience this one.
Well, this got a BAFTA for Best Cinematography and a ton of other noms when it came time for award season way back when. And yeah, I mean, that's so much of the fun of this thing. You get all these cool shots of these deserted Venetian alleyways because it takes place in like late fall, early winter, and all the tourists have basically gone home. It's just kind of unsettling. And
it makes so much sense that this got a BAFTA for best cinematography because the camera work in this is fantastic. Yeah. The camera is always moving around. The blocking, just all the shot selection is just so well thought out that it's the main thing that I took away watching. It was just like, wow, that they're just like that camera is just like locked in like perfectly.
Yeah. It's got great chemistry, obviously, between Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland. I mean, this film is pretty well known for its infamous love scene, which at the time kind of broke some boundaries. I mean, it a little tame by today's standards, but I'm sure that drove a few people into theaters to see this. I like the way that it's shot, just in that in order to get around censors and people that would, rave in not great ways about it. You cut back and forth to the couple getting ready for dinner and everything. It's just very well shot. It's more tasteful than I think people would have thought at the time, maybe.
Yeah, I was really surprised to find out that was like that editing choice was sort of to get around some censorship stuff because it feels like it fits so much with what the movie's doing that like I really didn't even give it a second thought that's why it would have been there.
Well, yeah, that scene comes off of the heels of like this like 10-minute stretch of just like fairly mundane couple shit. It it's just kind of them just being a married couple hanging out in a hotel. Yeah. Again, the chemistry between the two is it's so believable that they could be a married couple.
Yeah, it feels like one of the most realistic portrayals of like a couple I've ever seen on film. Just they feel so natural together.
Yeah. Yeah. And clearly they've been through some shit and are about to go through more. Yeah. Why don't we jump into it here? Things start off, you just got pouring rain in England, like you do. And the rain dissipates a little into a fairly nice day. And we've got this young girl, Christine. She's playing with her army man out in the backyard of this estate. And uh, she's got this ball that she's throwing around. I don't know if she's supposed to be using it sort of like a hand grenade or what, but that's what it feels like to me. Because this army doll's got a pull string and it's like giving commands and stuff. And I don't know. It's weird, but one thing that you definitely have to talk about when you talk about this movie is the use of the color red. From the little girl's jacket, her Macintosh, which is just this shiny red plastic, and then you've got the ball that she's throwing around, which is red and white. It's just very striking. And then we cut to her brother, who I didn't realize was her brother until maybe my second watching of the film, because
I was confused. Like I was just like, is this just like a neighborhood kid?
right.
Like who's just around? Like it took me a little while to figure out exactly what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, he's very much the unimportant child because everything's overshadowed. Yeah. I don't even think he gets. No, he does get a couple of speaking lines, and it's just him calling out to his dad. That is it. Yeah. That is all this kid gets to say. But he's the unimportant child, and he's just kind of wheeling around her on his bike. And we cut back to John and Laura, the Baxters, in their stately manner, just kind of hanging out, doing couple shit from 50 years ago in front of this roaring fire. Really, he's doing a little bit of work. He's looking over these slides from a church that he's going to be restoring in Venice. And he's looking very intently at this slide of the stained glass over the altar. And he sees this red figure sitting in one of the pews. And it's at this moment that he kind of knocks over his drink. And you get this kind of bleeding effect. And I'm not sure exactly how that's happening with the slide exactly, but it's it feels sort of like a bit of a premonition, I guess.
It's so weird, and not necessarily the first time you watch it, not knowing where the movie's going, seeing the red figure in the church is like, what? Because I mean, you assume it's the daughter there, and you're just like, what's going on? Like, the movie starts off and it's just already just kind of being kind of weird.
Yep. Totally agree. He kind of gets up a little flustered, and John and Laura, they must be fucking flat earthers or something, because they're talking about this pond and how, well, isn't it supposed to be flat? And it's so weird. It's the first thought that popped into my head here. Just again, he's sort of distracted, and she's, kind of talking, and he's like, yes, dear, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden he gets up and has to, sort of bolt outside. There's no real explanation. It's like he's got this feeling, right? And we go back outside to the brother, who manages to ride over this plate of glass that's just in the yard for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And he's got a little bit of the glass in one of his bike tires, so he's got it flipped over, and he's got, a little pocket knife or something that he's trying to, fix things with. And meanwhile, he's not paying attention to his sister, who's throwing this ball around and into the pond, I think. And it's very unclear how she ends up in the water. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost unimportant, really, but it seems
Mhm.
very glossed over because, um, I mean, he's trying to get this glass. The kid's trying. Johnny, the brother, is trying to get this glass out of the bike, and uh, John rushes outside, and he doesn't see her at all. And that's when Johnny comes running up to him, calling for him, and John races off to the pond and just kind of wades right in and then dives under the water. And here's some of that beautiful, beautiful camera work again with all the splashing
Yeah.
around and the slow motion. And as he brings her out, um, yeah, God, it's just,
Donald Sutherland is just like absolutely crushing in this movie. Just like right
yeah,
off the beginning of this movie, the way he performs this like finding his daughter drowned in like
yeah, the
just such
horrible
like a
moans. And,
guttural.
yeah.
Yeah, like he's making these like upsetting noises. Like it's
Mhm.
like not like it's not like pretty acting. It's like very like it feels real.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're, quite liable to let out some sounds that are going to be fairly unsettling if you find yourself in a situation like this.
Yeah.
It's like really very lizard brain, very animalistic, right? Um
Mhm.
so yeah, he brings her out of the water, he gets her to shore, he makes this half-hearted attempt to resuscitate her because I mean, he knows she's
Mhm.
gone. And oh, yeah. He picks her up and he just kind of collapses in the mud and gets her up again. And it's at this moment that Laura steps outside and just happens to look over and sees everything and lets out this scream. And I love the scream cutting over to the drill in the side of the
Yeah.
church. And
Just
it's
the sound blending over.
mhm,
It's like, it's so good.
yep.
Such great filmmaking.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm sure it had that type of transition had been used before, and it certainly has been used since. But it
Mhm.
feels really good in this film. Clearly, some time has passed, and now the couple's in Venice, and where John is supervising the restoration of this church. I do appreciate that the film gets like right into this. We're like not even 10 minutes in, and we're
Yeah.
already where we're
You
supposed to be. The conceit of the film has been established. It's
and they don't spend any time, like, really explaining things to you. They're just like, "Hey, we're
no,
doing this, like, catch up. Figure
yeah,
it out."
that's like my favorite type of sci-fi, personally, where
Mhm.
you get it just some super super grand universe or setting where there's a lot going on, there's a lot of different factions, there's a lot of backstory, but you don't get any amount of hand holding with it, and you get it, everything you need to know from context. Or if you're lucky and
Yeah.
it's Dune, you have some type of an appendix to help you out. But but ultimately, yeah, I love stories like that where so let's just drop you into the deep end and you can pick this up. We have faith in you.
There's no unnatural scene of John and Laura being like, "Well, as you know, I'm here to restore this church." Like, we don't
Right.
need that. Like,
Yes,
that
we're
I
wallowing
hate
in
that
our
type of movie.
grief months later, and
Yeah.
yes,
But, it's been 6 months since she died.
yes, yes, yes. I've been in therapy through all this time, and I have the pills to prove it. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's none of that kind of stuff. It's let's just dump you in the deep end. We think that you're smart enough to figure this out, and we are going to give you
Mhm.
all the context that you really need to do so. So perfect. Kudos to them.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, he kind of gives some direction to some of the workers and he takes off. He's joining Laura for lunch at a restaurant where she's been waiting, writing this letter to their son. They kind of catch up a little bit, and John's sort of distracted by this pair of women who are just staring at them, kind of. And
Yeah.
he gets this little bit of a chill. So he's got to get up and close this window. And immediately I think of my father. My mom and I make fun of him because he's the one who's always cold. And, like whether it's summer in Michigan or winter in Florida, it's the situation where wherever he is, there's always AC cranked, but he's always chilly because of it. And we always tease him like, "Oh, are you chilly?" And he's always got a fleece on or something. And immediately it's all I could think of with this situation. So he goes over and he closes the window. And it's one of those situations where you close that thing, and because of it, the way the air is flowing, it kind of forces the doorway to blow open. And but it's also kind of like a spooky type of situation in which the doors blow open. I love that it's partially in slow motion there, and you get,
That feeling of like when you're like there's like a cross breeze going in a room and you go to close a door and it just like slams.
Yep.
It's always so uncomfortable.
Yep, exactly. And as this happens, a bunch of dust and grit and stuff from the street outside blows in, and of course the ladies at the other table, one of them gets something in her eye, and well, that's not great. And they kind of get up to go deal with that. Meanwhile, John and Laura are still speaking. I think they're ordering at this point, and
Yeah.
and that's when the ladies kind of collide with them, and we realize, one of them's blind, and of course, it is very much a case of the blind leading the blind, as it's the sighted sister that ultimately has something in her eye, and they kind of almost walk into the men's room, and Laura looks up and is like, I gotta go help these people out. It's and I think we kind of glossed over here too. Part of their conversation, she's writing a letter to their son, the son that we just don't
Yeah,
give
the son's
two
been
shits
sent to
about.
boarding school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she makes the comment about how, yeah, it's nothing really important. I'm just, writing him a letter. Maybe you should too. Write your own, because he talks about how, hey, you could add in a little something for me at the end or whatever. And they talk about a few other mundane things. He talks a little bit about the church, and I think she needs.
It's an important thing in the movie because like a recurring theme in it is the way that like men have trouble communicating and stuff, and it comes up
Yeah.
in a bunch of weird ways, but I think it's a prevalent theme throughout the film.
Oh yeah, it comes back again and again. You're absolutely right. Just of course, his takes on things, there are the correct ones. His
Yeah.
way of dealing with everything, that's the way that they need to deal with it. It's that does come up again and again. And I mean, it's absolutely a storyline from 50 years ago, that's for sure. But I think she needs like a little break from this conversation, and that's part of why she gets up to go help these ladies. But she wanders off to go help direct them, and she Wendy, rather, the sister who has something in her eye, she apologizes in the restroom for staring, and Laura attempts to help get this massive plank out of her eye and everything, and John, in the meantime, is just sitting there kind of staring out at the water, and he thinks back to leaving rainy England. But I think this is maybe a little bit of a premonition as well at this point, because this little
I think it
shot
is.
does come back.
And it's just that the way that like the water is like a foreboding presence in the movie. Like water is like this like harbinger of death. And Like, can you think of like a worse place to go
Than
if your
Venice.
daughter like drowned than a city that's like submerged underwater?
Yep. Yep. That's kind of perfect. I'm sure that's very
Yeah.
intentional as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's I can't
Well,
remember if we
it's
see.
interesting because I think the short story's still set in Venice, I believe,
Yeah.
but the daughter actually doesn't drown in the short story.
Ah.
I believe that the daughter dies of like cholera. So that's just an interesting kind of
Yeah.
like the director's like decision to like make water a central focus of this
Okay.
story is it's pretty interesting.
That's cool. That's really cool. When we have him thinking about this rainy scene back in England, do we see him in the car or do we only see Laura in the car? I can't recall. Um,
I can't either. I think it might just be Laura.
okay. Because if that's the case, then yeah, I really do think it is something of a premonition then. Um, but we'll get there eventually. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we cut back to the bathroom, and this is where Heather, the blind sister, she gets a little personal with Laura, telling her that she's seen her little girl with her and John back there at the table, and that she's happy, she's laughing, she's all right, and this kind of unsettles Laura a little bit, and I think she finally starts to believe, or maybe is feeling a little bit more comfortable with the situation when Heather mentions her wearing her shiny Macintosh, the red
Yeah.
rain slicker.
She mentions the she like that's it's just so that would be so creepy to like
Oh yeah,
have that happen to you. Just like somebody describe the jacket that your daughter died in
yeah. Just thinking about it,
with
kind of
like
getting
not
it chill
knowing
on my
you at all,
spine. Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
it's just
Oh
so
yeah.
it's so like yeah,
Yeah.
creepy.
And I kind of think that Laura maybe kind of swooned a little bit in the restroom at this point too, because
Mhm.
we cut to Heather, just kind of running her hands over her face and everything, and Wendy waving something under her nose. If it's not smelling salts, she's giving her a bump or something like that to help wake her up. I don't know, but yeah, they kind of say their goodbyes and their thank yous there, and yeah, it's weird. But
It
Laura,
is.
Laura,
The sisters are so creepy in such like a it's I got a lot of David Lynch vibes from the sisters. Like the
yeah,
way that they play their characters is just so it's like
it's like the old people at the beginning
bordering
of
on
Mulholland Drive.
comical. Yeah, and I was actually going to bring that up because there's a specific scene in this because like the editing in this is so frantic, and there's a scene later on where she's trying to convince John to go to the seance with her. And in the middle of their conversation, it cuts to the sisters laughing. And
Yeah,
it made me think of that scene in Mulholland Drive where it just cuts to the old couple in the limo.
yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah.
how that little flash of the sisters laughing is kind of there to kind of help you lean towards John's perspective of, okay, these,
Hmm.
they're hucksters. They're trying to put one
Yeah, they
over
feel
on
so
you.
sinister.
Yeah, they're trying to make a buck from you over this or something. Something just isn't
Yeah.
right with them. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just this over the top performance that's like bordering on comedy, but just
Mhm.
like not getting over. So it's just coming off as like uncanny and just like a little creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so much of this film. It's just there to
Hmm.
put you at unease, I guess.
Yeah, this movie's like all mood.
Yeah. Yep. No plot, just vibes. Um
Yeah. Oops, all vibes.
Yep. Um So yeah, the sisters leave, and Laura, she kind of gets up from the table. She's like, I need to stand up. And next thing you know, she's collapsing over the table.
Mhm.
And you've got all this like oil and vinegar from the salad pouring everywhere. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not going to
that
come out of the
recurring
grout.
imagery. you get this recurring imagery of like in this scene, like both like one like the broken glassware and like the spilling like from when John like dropped his drink on the slide or whatever. And then
Mhm.
also like the mosaic tiles on the floor too, which is kind of a recurring thing.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah. A
yeah,
lot of the imagery is really consistent throughout the film. It brings a certain vibe to it.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And from there, we basically cut to a couple of Venetian EMTs carting her off into
Mhm.
this little hospital boat. I love the hospital boat. Um,
Yeah.
it's a little ambulance boat, I guess. It's neat. And for some reason, they put her in this room with a window to a children's ward. Um, you got all these little kids
Yeah.
playing. And one of them has a ball with kind of like the inverse color scheme of
Yeah.
Laura's. That was a nice touch, and they're like locking eyes as the kids playing with it. Um, yeah, Laura's in really good spirits at this point. She tells John about the psychic and how she, says that she saw Christine with them. He doesn't want to hear any of this, of course. He's concerned about her, but it's that
Mhm.
like very 1970s male concern of, well, we got to get you right. And, we don't need this to, make things spiral out of control or anything. It's,
Yeah.
he kind of
He
sucks
he
just a little bit in this scene, but
he has this bemusement about him, like that, like she brings up Laura and she's like this interaction with these sisters has just like she's just cool with it. Like she's accepted the death
Mhm.
now. Like she's moving past it. And he's like surprised that like she can just be like over it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's one of like the really like big things about this movie is the he will just never be able to get over this.
yeah, he wants to be able to deal with this death in his own very, very specific way. And,
Mhm.
how dare she find
Yeah.
any
But
solace
he
in,
he just he just doesn't want to confront it at all. Like
yeah,
he just wants
I
to
think you're
just
right.
like put it behind him and just try to like go on and like that's not gonna work, my dude.
No, no, that's gonna cause some major problems down the road for you, buddy. Yeah, at the end of the day in this conversation, he seems very pleased that at least she's happy. And, you
Yeah,
know,
that she's okay and that he's
yeah.
gonna be like, okay, we can go home.
Yep. So on their way home, the boat that they're in has to make its way around this area that's blocked off because of a homicide investigation. And this is our first little hint that strange things are afoot in Venice.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And as they kind of move away from that, she forces him to stop at this church so that she can say a prayer. He is not pleased because they're already late to this meeting that he has with the bishop.
So this is something I didn't notice in this part of the movie. I saw it. It was pointed out in a little thing on the editing that the Criterion YouTube had put out. You did you notice the funeral barge in this scene from the end of the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they pan by it, and like when you watch it for the first time, you don't think anything of it. It's just this black
Mhm.
boat, these gold trimmings or whatever, and like when it's a thing that you watch it the second time, and you start to the premonitions are like much more in the movie than I thought they were. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a film that rewards repeat viewings from that standpoint.
Hmm.
It's but yeah, that's definitely there. They pop into the church and she gets some change off of him so she can light a few candles there. And as she's
Six
praying,
candles.
yeah, yeah, she's
That's a lot of candles.
yeah, she's kind of making it rain there for that church. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
and while she's praying, John thinks that he sees the sisters kind of roaming around the
Mhm.
church, and maybe they were there. I don't know, but you get that really eerie, bit of Heather, the psychic sister, kind of floating on by, and she lets out this eerie little sigh, this and
Mhm.
makes me think of
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2 after Ash's girlfriend is turned into a deadite, and he has to chop her apart and bury her. When she comes back, and her corpse does this little dance outside,
The
and then
dance, yeah.
her body just kind of flies off, and you hear her go. It's exactly what I thought of in that bit. It's weird. It's very weird,
Yeah.
I
It
like
is.
it. And John's like covering his face just so they maybe won't recognize him or something, or just
Yeah.
maybe just trying to hide the situation from himself in some ways, because he doesn't want to face whatever is going on. But yeah, that's where Laura pops up behind him and calls him a hypocrite because she thinks he's sitting there praying.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's like, "We're already an hour and a half late. We got to go," because they're off to go see the bishop. I like the bishop character quite a bit. He's kind.
Yeah, this was interesting because when I finished the movie, I had a lot of like just like that character was strange, and I had to spend a lot of time thinking about like why he's there and what kind of like what the movie intends with the character. And upon like reflecting and thinking about the film, I think I like the character a lot more.
Yeah, he's kind of stern, but he's just seems incredibly supportive of John and Laura.
Hmm.
Even though he seems like he couldn't give two shits about the church that's being restored. I think he just has other things in his mind.
I don't know. It's this weird thing where he constantly like reassures John, like, I care about this church. It means a lot. And then John's always complaining about just like he won't give me enough money to rebuild the church. And I think that that's sort of like I think that plays into like the theme of the film, right? Because John is spending all this time trying to restore this dead thing, this thing that's
Yeah.
already burnt out. And the priest is like, "Look, man, we can like fix it up to a certain extent or whatever, but it's not going to be the way that it was or whatever." And I think that that's, John wants his daughter back, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfectly put. I think it's at this point that the bishop asks Laura if she's a Christian, and she's like,
Mhm.
well, I'm kind to animals and children. And yeah, that's perfect. That's be kind to animals
Yeah.
and children, please. But
That was a line that like I reflected on a lot thinking about what the movie means. And I think what it's more asking is like because so did you get the impression that like it's talked about like the second sight or whatever, like the premonitions and like the spiritual connection, whatever it is. I think the priest is supposed to be implied that he also has it, because there's that
yeah.
scene towards the end of the movie where he wakes up during
Hmm.
all of the stuff, and there's the red light there and stuff. And so I think what he's really more of asking is like, are you a Christian? Like, are you a believer?
Right.
And like that, like this thing is like it's like the belief or whatever. It can be like the psychic stuff, or it can be like your connection with like God, like the priest has. I think that that's sort of kind of what the movie's trying to imply with it.
That works for me. Um, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
they kind of part ways because the bishop, I guess, he's got bishop shit to do. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
He's got something to do. He's like, look, guys, I stood around for an hour and a half. Okay. Like,
yep.
I
Yep.
don't got a lot of time. Busy man.
Yep. Yep. And it's here where we find out that they're going to be going to stay with him before too long. I
Yeah.
didn't quite catch what that was all about in my first viewing or two of the film, just because well, there's a lot that you could easily miss in this film. But
Yeah. This film is just throwing stuff out for you. Like, it's
yeah,
never gonna just it's never gonna like look at you and be like, pay attention to this.
Right, right. But it definitely rewards careful attention because
Yeah.
it's revealed later on that, yeah, because winter is approaching and the tourist season is basically done, the hotel that they're at is going to be shutting down for the winter and they're going to be staying with the bishop then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where the bishop departs and they go to head back to their hotel. And this is where we get, what we were talking about before. Them, she goes to take a bath. He ends up taking a shower eventually. They're just kind of like hanging around naked in the hotel. There's the funny little bit where the maid comes in with some linens and he's sitting there naked at his drawing table. And ultimately, yeah, there's the love scene that's like we talked about, kind of intercut with them getting ready for dinner. And it's just, a very, very frank and tender series of scenes of just, a married couple being a married couple.
Because I had always heard about this movie as for like the two things that you always hear about: the ending scene, which is like one of the the best twists in horror history or whatever, and then like this sex scene, which is like so controversial. This sex scene, that like rumors that like it was an unsimulated sex scene, that they actually had sex or whatever. And when you watch it, it's like not erotic or anything. Like it's very like loving and it's very like passionate and like I think it's meant to imply that this is like the first time that they've had sex since their daughter died.
Yeah, I would not be shocked if that were the case in this story. Yeah, it's things are kind of turning around for her a little bit, and yeah,
I like often in these types of movies, like a married couple and their kid dies or whatever. It's always like that, like the couple hate each other now, and it's like about like the disillusion of a marriage or whatever. I like that in this movie, they just like they've got a good relationship, they love each other, and there's just like things are different now. Like it's just like the grief is just the thing in between them. It's not like that like they hate each other now.
Yeah, you don't spend the better part of 2 hours watching a marriage crumble. It's
it's just like this, like there's just like this hammer hanging over them that just feels like it's about to drop anytime.
Right. And I think that's maybe a little bit reflective of when the film was made, maybe. Because you see a lot of relationship stuff in films of the more modern era, where things suck. Things are, really real as far as how bad things are with a couple.
Yeah.
Because it's not,
or like,
a situation where that kind of stuff is swept under the rug, maybe, and everything is all hunky dory. But in this film, it really is pretty good for them, for the most part.
Yeah, like they like I said, if they feel like one of the most genuine couples you've ever seen on screen before.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, it's not like you're watching Marriage Story or anything where you're just watching this couple fight and argue and bicker all the time. It's just like they love each other and they're just like, John feels uncomfortable that she's like the way you would if your wife started talking about seances and stuff. You're like, okay, well, let's slow down maybe. Like, obviously, our daughter died. Maybe you're feeling a little, trauma from that or whatever. But yeah, it's not like they're like they hate each other now or anything.
No.
I appreciate that. It's something you don't see in a lot of these kind of movies.
Yeah, it's very refreshing. Yeah, love it. Couldn't be better. So
it's really good.
So they depart for dinner. The hotel staff looks absolutely crestfallen that they won't be eating with them, probably because they're the last people staying in this hotel and they got to stay open for just a couple of more days and they're not making any money. But God, it's like somebody, shot their dog or something. They look so sad. And as they're heading off to dinner, they kind of lose themselves in the alleys of Venice. And John seems to recognize this dead end that they found themselves in, and there's rats, and they spook they spook Laura, and that's where we catch this flash of a familiar looking figure in red, and we see that another murder has clearly happened because they stumble upon yet another crime scene. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and like all the murders happen on the water. Like
Yep.
it's like right off the canals or whatever. And like the way Venice is shot in this movie is so like, because I mean Venice is like, I mean, you know, when you watch Spider-Man Far From Home or whatever, it's this beautiful city.
Yeah.
And he makes it so foreboding and just like creepy, like it's this maze with all this water around it. And yeah, it's just like a different look at this city that every time, other time that I've seen it's nothing been but just like, oh my God, this looks like the coolest place ever.
Right. Happy tourist time is usually every other movie, even Casino Royale, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you even get that shot in this film of them walking down a dark alley, and they comment about how it's a dark alley, and it's yeah, like you said, very foreboding. So we cut to the next day from here, where John spies the sisters looking at him and Laura as he oversees the placement of a statue over a doorway in this church. It's this horrible gargoyle type thing that he's got his face mashed into for a good portion of this scene. And he's like precariously perched on a couple of ladders. It's like he almost falls a couple of times. There's not a lot of safety gear that they're using. This is not OSHA approved.
Yeah, the real villain of this movie is unsafe working conditions.
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's at this moment that Laura kind of notices that the sisters are there, and she walks off after them. And let's see here. She talks with them a little bit more about her daughter, and Heather proclaims that John has the gift, and that's how he foresaw his daughter's demise. Yeah, because she had told them then that, yeah, he just kind of got up and ran outside for really no reason, and that's how he ended up finding her. And boy, howdy, does he have the gift, because so much of what he sees in this film is not going to be good for him. So they invite the couple for tea and maybe a seance, maybe. And
tea. As soon as she walks in, she's pouring shots of whiskey. I don't know what kind of tea they're drinking.
Yep. That's okay. That's okay. Whiskey works.
That's one of like the weirdest details of this movie. When I walked in, she walks in and immediately is just like, drink this shot of whiskey.
Yep. Yeah, John's kind of disapproving of all of this, and this is where we get that bit that you were talking about, where we cut to the sisters cackling maniacally in their hotel. It's
so creepy.
Yeah, you think they're witches or something. That's the feeling you get from a scene like this.
It's like the Rosemary's Baby kind of feeling of like
people
in that movie of like these weird occultists or whatever. Yeah. So creepy.
The year is one. Yeah. He just tells her, well, go fuck off with the sisters then. And he kind of storms off. And it's funny because she goes to their hotel and they offer her that whiskey and she never drinks it. Meanwhile, he's off in a bar somewhere getting hammered. And we kind of cut back and forth between the hotel room and John kind of wandering around. And
yeah, he's drinking at a bar, and then like while like the seance gets going, which is a creepy ass scene.
Yeah.
Like the blind sister just like acting her ass off in this movie.
Yeah,
just like giving it all she's got.
Great. Just absolutely
so
great. Also, the blind sister other than the goofy socks at the end, has just an awesome fashion sense with all
Yeah, she
her
does. Like she wearing
jackets.
like this leather jacket this entire time. This purple scarf tied around her head. Yeah, she dresses
Yeah,
for being blind. She's got great fashion sense.
yeah,
Hired
yeah,
a good stylist, I guess.
yeah. Well, that's probably just her sister, but but
I don't know. Her
ultimately,
sister doesn't dress very well.
no,
She
no. Well,
got these weird ass brooches and stuff.
right, right. Well, she spends all her money on her sister's wardrobe then.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of get going with their little seance thing. And I'm kind of unclear where John stumbles off to. Is it their
So
hotel?
yeah,
Is
so I had to kind of look into this and kind of figure out what's going on because so one really interesting thing that this movie does is it's obviously set in Italy. People are speaking Italian. You don't get any subtitles for those things.
nope.
I think that that's intended to play along with the communication is a theme in the movie and this like lack of being able to communicate, so the audience also doesn't get to understand the Italian. And so
Right.
what's happening is John goes to their hotel room and is like sneaking around trying to see what's going on in the seance, and these guys think that he's a peeping tom, and
Right.
they come out and harass him and like talk shit to him and stuff.
Yep. They kind
Yeah,
of chase him off. I also love the whole thing of walking into a building and just
yeah.
having to ring a bell to get some type of attendance attention, because that happens multiple times. And the
Hmm.
way he's ringing this thing and is clearly a little loaded. Yeah, it's
He's
just
really ringing the hell out of that
yeah,
bell.
oh yeah, he is.
But yeah, and then
Um,
he decides to walk behind the desk and go through the book to see what room the
okay,
sisters are
that's
staying
what that
in.
was. Yeah, that makes more sense now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, he kind of gets
Again,
chased
this
off.
movie will not spoon feed you anything. It's like you better
No,
pick
not
up
at
what we're
all.
putting down or you're not gonna figure it out.
Yes, yes. Again, can't wait for that 4K disc because maybe I'm gonna have to wait for a half off sale for sure. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. This isn't one where I feel like I need to get it right away, but man, this movie's gonna look so good in 4K.
oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, I can't wait to pour over it just a little bit more. So
Mhm.
yeah, John leaves the hotel then, and meanwhile, Heather's having some kind of a fit. And John goes back to the bar to drink a little more. And Laura leaves and finds him, and she's chastising him for his drinking. And back at the hotel, she tells him about Heather's warning to leave Venice. Well, ostensibly a warning from their dead daughter, Christine, to leave Venice.
Mhm.
And John is sick. And she's like, yeah, you
Yep.
better not get sick. And then he goes and throws up. And he's like, I haven't thrown up in 10 years. Yeah, well, you got yourself good and loaded because you're
Yeah. Yeah,
upset
you've been
about the
drinking all
situation.
night.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, he's not doing so well, and she is pressuring him that they need to leave. He's a little bit of a drunken ass. Um,
Yep.
she talks about being ill and maybe needing to see her doctor again. I love how all she's doing is just trying to placate him at this point. I don't think she honestly
Yeah.
really believes that she's in such a bad way because she's like, maybe I'll start taking my pills again. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
great. They're right over there at the table. And he goes and he pours her some water and hands it right to her. And, of course she palms
It's
the
such a
pill.
It's such an interesting because the movie is like wants you to kind of be on his side. Although obviously, it's like we're seeing a bit of the ghosts of the daughter or whatever. So you do know something supernatural is happening. But like it's it's interesting because he's just like I think his reactions are like understandable when she's talking about like our daughter is warning us of this thing. He's like, she's dead. Like
Yeah.
it's because it's so what's interesting about this movie is that he feels like she's not willing to confront like that their daughter is dead or whatever, but really what's going on is that's what he's doing, that
Yeah.
he's seeing all this stuff, he's experiencing this grief, and he refuses to like accept that it's real.
Yeah, he's projecting a lot of these things onto her ultimately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I absolutely love that she palms the pill and then hides it in her
Yeah.
sleeve. Because she's like, no, motherfucker, we know what's going on. We're just gonna
Look.
let you sleep it off, and or this conversation is gonna be done. And yeah, we cut to the middle of the night then, and their phone's ringing because it's a call from their kid's boarding school. Oh yeah, that's right. They have another kid.
Yep.
But yeah, little Johnny's had an accident. Um, God, first few times I saw this movie, I completely missed that he's like in a bed off to the side of the room, and he's got this giant goose egg on his forehead.
Yeah, it's like glittery and just like it's so funny.
Yeah, his face is just like glistening with sweat and tears. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, they're like, he's okay. He's okay. We took him to the hospital. We ran some tests. He's good. He's good. But we needed to let you know. What time is it there, by the way? It's like, come on, guys. Really? Come on. But yeah, and at this point, as much as she wants to get out of Venice, yeah. Oh, and that's also something that I kind of glossed over, where the conversation where she's doing everything she can to kind of put him at ease. She asks him if he can take some time off from this project to spend with her. And yeah, he seems not happy about it in that
No.
moment. But
No.
later
He's
on in the
he's
film,
obsessed with restoring this dead thing. He has
yeah,
to do it.
but he really comes around on this idea of taking some time away from it in the following scenes. Um, so I think chalk it up to him just being drunk and in a foul
Yeah.
mood, I think. But yeah, I mean, as much as he is obsessed about this, he loves his wife. He wants to make sure she's doing okay. So yeah,
To get back to the scene, because I want to hammer this home because I think this is like intentional, but like the headmaster of the school calling them, and like you can't understand a single thing the guy's saying. He's just like babbling on, and he's like, and like I think it's like an intentional thing of like men can't communicate, and the woman at the school has to take the phone from him to like be like, look, this is what's going on.
No, that's absolutely perfect. And I love that. But yeah, she does and lays it out for them. And, they're like, oh crap. Well, I got to get on a flight to, and they're like telling her, no, you don't have to come. Everything's good. And, Laura already spooked with the warning from Heather. It's like, yeah, I got to get out of here and you need to come with me as soon as you possibly can. And, of course he does the, 1970s guy thing. And he's like, I'm going to stick around because of work until I can come, instead of just hopping on a plane with her right then and there to go check on your kid. But yeah, he sends her off
One
on
of like the tough things about this movie is it's hard to tell if they're like, if it's just like a normal thing for these kind of like well-off parents to like put their kids in boarding school at the time, or if it's supposed to mean that they're sort of like distant parents. Like I can't tell what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's, yeah, I guess I don't know how to feel about that either. It's, if it was this kid, maybe the kids always were in boarding school and they were just home for the holidays or something when this accident happened. Because for some reason that scene at the beginning of the film feels kind of Christmassy to me. But
it feels like late fall, maybe early winter.
yeah. But maybe the kids always went off to school. Maybe he's just in boarding school because, of course, they got to go to Venice for his work. And, it seems like she also does some type of support work for the work that he does. Like almost like
because she's always around the church as well.
Yeah, and she was doing stuff with helping to like organize the slides and stuff in the beginning of the film.
Right.
So,
right.
maybe just because they were both going to be so involved with this project, and it's like, yeah, do we really want to spend the money to, take care of 3 people abroad? I don't know,
Yeah. And you
but
had to send your kid to Italian school.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they do a pretty decent job with their Italian until they don't. That part's a little bit inconsistent, but I chalk
I
up
mean,
the
I don't know because
scenes.
I don't speak Italian, so I can't really tell if they're like doing a good job of speaking it or
Well, they
not.
seem to get
John's
by.
certainly like, yeah, he's doing a little bit.
Yeah, they seem to get by really well, except for those scenes kind of towards the end, where he's like at
Yeah.
the sister's hotel and they've already moved on, but he
Yeah.
can't spit out what he's trying to say. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Either the film's just inconsistent with it, or it's the stress of the situation causing him to have troubles with language. Again, the trouble with communication, right?
Yep.
But so yeah, she flies back to England, and like shortly after she takes off, he heads to the church to do a little work, and the bishop understands that he needs to head back home for a while as well. And the way that the bishop says this to him, it's almost like, why did you not go with her?
Yeah.
It's your kid. But again, understanding that he needs to spend some time away as well. Yeah, it's funny though, and it just kind of endures me to the bishop again as well. And
Yeah.
this is where the bishop gives him these pieces for the mosaic that they're repairing. And John heads up into the scaffolding, the most rickety scaffolding ever to deal with this. And there's a little bit of an accident that nearly kills him that seems to go on for quite some time. I gotta say. Yeah, there was something in the rafters that falls through the little like gondola that he's suspended in.
They just have this thing that's like held up. Like you see, like these like 5 guys holding on to it to keep it up while he's standing on it, and
Right.
it's just like so like you look at it like, why would you ever stand on that? That's like the most dangerous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, they have to lower him down a little bit once he gets into it. And I'm thinking to myself, don't you have like a cleat or something that you can tie this line off on, so that you don't have to have the 5 guys standing there holding the rope while he's up there trying to work on this thing? It would certainly keep things a little steadier if you could tie that off. But I don't know. It's interesting how this thing, whatever it is, it's like a board or something like that falls and it crashes through this glass that's on this little contraption and just smashes the shit out of it. And he's left dangling on a rope. And you've got everybody and their brother trying to kind of get him in there, and you got the poor bishop on the ground. Everybody's dropping shit that nearly hits him. Like they're trying to use this pole to push John out so he can swing back in. And then somebody drops the fucking pole and it nearly hits the bishop. But they do eventually reel him in, and everyone is quite relieved.
Yeah.
And
this is why we have workplace regulations.
Yep. That's why you don't, build your operation in a hollowed out volcano with no stair rails on your stairs. Yeah. So yeah, he survives, and Bishop and John, they go for a walk, and John tells him about the warning to leave Venice. And I love the line that the bishop says about how he wishes that he himself did not have to believe in prophecy.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I think that speaks to sort of how I feel about the movie, about like the religious aspects of like the supernatural are like the same as what the sisters, their sort of psychic beliefs and stuff. That like, because John's like, yeah, they told me just about this, like they had a prophecy, and he's just like, yeah, I believe in that shit for sure.
Yeah. It's yeah, one of those things where as a man of faith, the bishop is like, yeah, prophecy is, yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
believe, and this is going to come true. Whereas, you wonder from John's perspective, is all of this stuff, all of these premonitions, are these all things that are ultimately going to come true? Are they destined to come
Yeah.
true, or are these things that can be changed? Um, yeah, it's
So
interesting.
this is where the bishop tells John that his dad died in a fall. And then
Yeah.
John's son just like had a fall at school, and now John's had a fall. It's this the way the movie plays with like, like time is a flat circle or whatever. It's just like
Yep.
it's all happening at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. I like it a lot. They
Yeah.
finish their walk as they come upon yet another crime scene where they're fishing a
Mhm.
body out of the water. Um, oof. Yeah, that doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, this is maybe the only part of the movie that doesn't look very good in HD. Like that is not a body. That my friend is a mannequin.
yeah, not until they get it onto the boat. Then it's a little bit more like a body. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah. So John goes back to the hotel to pack up, and he finds a maid dropping a deuce in the bathroom there. That was fun. She puts down the magazine that she was reading very
Yeah.
gingerly and steps out after apologizing.
I think it's the same maid that walked in on him earlier, so it's like a reversal of the roles.
Right. That's perfect. Also,
Yeah.
the maid looks a lot like the cop from later when a certain
Mm,
someone is being held at the police
yeah.
station. Um, but yeah, he goes back to the hotel to finish packing up, and yeah, because he's got to have all of his stuff moved to the bishop's place, and this is he leaves the hotel and he gets on a boat, and that's where he sees his wife and the sisters on another boat, and he's calling out to her, and they're all dressed in black, and
Yeah.
they
They're
don't
on the black boat that I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier.
Yep, and they don't respond to him, and he kind of gives chase through the canals, kind of loses track of them. He goes back to the hotel, and everybody at the hotel is like, "What the fuck? We thought you were gone. We're closed now." The guy in the lobby is trying to eat his sandwich. Um, he walks into the manager's little apartment, and the guy's hair is like all out of control, and he's like, "Dude, this is my vacation now. I'm done with you."
It's close. We're closed.
Yeah, yeah, you left, right? Everybody left.
Yeah.
Your wife flew back home. We're good now, right? Yeah, so he realizes, yeah, the manager's not going to be very helpful there. Um, and John kind of walks the empty streets lost in thought, and he finds this drowned baby doll. That's nice
Mhm.
touch there.
Creepy.
Uh-huh. And at this point, he's just kind of convinced that the sisters have something nefarious in mind. And he goes to the police and he has some sketches of them drawn up. Um, and then goes to speak with a detective. And I love this hallway, and it almost looks like the doors aren't even labeled, and he just finds this
Yeah.
guy's office by listening for the typewriter that's just tapping away there. um but they have this very, very poetic conversation, um and while he's talking about the sisters, the detective is looking out the window at these two women walking along who very well could be the sisters.
I
um
think they are. I think they
yeah,
are them.
it's one of those things where it's clear that one of them is probably blind. They have a very similar build, but you never see their
Yeah.
faces either.
Or at the very least, that it's supposed to be like the detective being like, yeah, like there's just two women all over the place. Like, what do you want me to
Yeah,
do?
exactly. Yeah, and a lot of the conversation is about, well, your wife's back in town, so what?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
she'll come
He's
and
like, what are
find
you
you.
afraid of?
Yeah, yeah. What is it that you fear? He asks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and John, I don't think he quite. Once again, the problem where he just can't communicate. He
Mhm.
has a hard time getting it out there. That
Yeah,
well,
he's just like
ultim-
generally worried about like
yeah,
there's this murder on the loose and these women and his wife, and he's just like, it's just weird.
yep. And yeah, the detective ultimately is like, well, go home, but also, maybe look around for a little bit, see if you can, maybe find these sisters. And I don't think John quite realizes that he's giving him this assignment to do to sort of rule
Yeah.
him out, to, rule him out as a suspect in the
Yeah.
disappearance of his own wife. Because next thing you know, he's being tailed by another detective.
Yeah, like as soon as John leaves the room, the detective picks up his phone and is like, "You need to
Mhm.
follow this dude right now."
Yep, exactly. Because I am very concerned about him. Um, so yeah,
So an interesting thing I read is that like the actor playing the detective didn't speak English at all. They taught him the lines by sound. He didn't know what he was saying. So there is this like their conversation is so weird and broken, and that's part of like why.
yeah, yeah. Oh God, what is your fear? That's, but yeah,
Mm,
I do very much love the way that plays out. Um,
yeah, it's very unnerving.
yeah. So yeah, we get the other detective then following him through all these empty alleyways, and John's on this bridge, and he looks down at the reflection of some red laundry in the water below, and you get that flash of his daughter running in the
Mhm.
water, and he looks up and he sees this red clad figure um, off in the distance, kind of standing and peeking out from around a corner at him, and quickly disappears. And he tears off after it, and searches all the different alleyways and everything, and no luck. Meanwhile, the detective is still after him, and the detective pops into this bar to make a phone call and report on what he's found. And this is where John pops into the well, now former residence of the sisters, and he's having an awful time getting the managers there to understand what he's looking for. They know that he needs to see a specific room, but other than that, they don't really understand him, and they take him to the room, and it's empty. It's it's clearly
Yeah,
where the
they've
sisters were
gone.
staying, but they've already gone. And it's at this point that the detective that's been following him just walks in behind him and is like, "Yeah, murder squad," as he shows him his badge. There's, yeah, something kind of unsettling about the name of the group that you're with the police, that it's called the Murder Squad.
The murder squad.
I understand it's a translation thing, but also, wow, that's unsettling. Um, Especially if you think your wife is missing. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, he reveals himself, and we know that the sisters have gone somewhere else. In fact, I think we get a flash of Wendy at their new place, like telling somebody off screen that, "Oh yeah, this is going to be perfect." And again, you get that feeling from these little snippets that, again, they're like grifters of some sort, and they're just
Just
moving
up to
on.
something. They're just weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and
Um,
we didn't really talk about it before, but they have all those like the pictures of these children and like this bust
mhm.
that like
Yeah, they're like
they don't
deceased
really
family
explain.
members or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah. Again, super unsettling.
yeah, it's just
Um,
weird.
yeah, general unease. Um, so yeah, John goes to speak with the bishop at this point, and he's got to wait because the bishop is in this meeting. The meeting that the bishop is in, you got this other priest there with him who's doing priest shit, and you've got this lady who's just sitting in front of them looking
Yeah,
extra uncomfortable. And
yeah,
I don't know what's going on there, but you feel uncomfortable because of it. it's
yeah.
it's great. Very effective.
It's so weird.
Yep. So while John is waiting, he asks to make, one of the most expensive phone calls ever to England. And they're like, fill out this form. I noticed that for the first time here that they have him
Yeah,
fill out a form to make the phone call.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You can't call collect or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So he gets a hold of the matron from the school, and she's like, "Yeah, everything's good." And then finally, he realizes, yeah, his wife is there, and
Yeah,
again, they just do not understand each other in these phone calls because everybody's trying to talk over everybody else, and yeah, Laura's fine, Johnny's fine. She wants to come back and see him. She's more at ease now about the warning to get out of Venice because, she knows that her kid's fine. And, she's like,
well,
I'm
I
fine.
believe doesn't he tell her about the fall he had at work?
Um,
And am I remembering that right? Because I
can't remember.
believe he brings it up, and then she's like, "That must," or maybe they're talking about their son's fall, but he's like, "That must have been the thing that they were talking. That's the danger they were talking about."
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That,
Yeah,
yeah, because the kid is fine,
yeah,
things sound like they're good. And she's like, and I'm fine. Honestly, John, I'm doing okay. So
hmm
I'm going to come back. I'm going to take, late night flight here. I'll be back in time. We can go for a late dinner. And again, just them kind of talking at each other and not really to each other.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's, but I think they both kind of put each other at ease at this point. And, so he gets off the phone and the bishop comes out and, I forget exactly what their conversation is at this point. Oh, yes. John realizes that he's made a terrible mistake and he goes running off to the police
right.
station where you find poor Heather, poor
Yeah,
Heather in this dark, dark cell with this female officer. Um, and she's
she's
like,
just so confused.
I don't like being here at the police station. The horrible sounds that I've heard while I'm here. Oh, God, you feel so bad for her. Apparently, her sister Wendy has gone to the British consulate to try to get some help because they don't understand why they've been, arrested. Um, they're in a bad way. And I also love how John just kind of bursts right into this police station, goes right to the cell and is talking to
Mhm.
her and is like, yeah, can I take her home? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. It's,
Yeah, yeah. Things were a lot more lax back in the day.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah. 50 years ago, it was a different time.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh God. But yeah, he offers to walk her home because he feels horrible.
hmm
After what he's put these poor women through, especially Heather. Um, so he apologizes profusely and they make their way through the canals there. And she kind of gets all poetic about the city and how she loves it there because She can walk very easily because of the way that sound works in all of these alleyways and the canals. She can really tell where she's at, but her sister just absolutely hates it. And as they're walking along, she has this line where she goes, "We're almost there." And I love how that's, sure, we're almost back to our hotel, but also it's almost one of these, yeah, we're almost there, as in all of
We're
the
getting to the
things
end.
all of the things that I have been seeing and that you potentially have been seeing are coming to a head. Yeah, we're almost there. Um, so, uh, let's see here. We get back to their hotel, and I am just shocked when they get to the door and Wendy's there, that Wendy isn't any more pissed than she appears. Yeah, after
They're very chill about it.
yeah, yeah. It was a mild inconvenience, I guess, getting carted off to jail and having to go down to the British consulate for help. Um, but uh, this is where Laura gets back to Venice, and
oh wait, I just want to point out that as soon as they walk into the hotel, she immediately goes, "Get him a shot of whiskey."
Yep. Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right.
These sisters party.
Yeah, they got like a little airplane bottle of Johnny Walker Red. I see.
Anytime somebody goes in their house, they're like, "We're gonna do shots."
Yep. It's whiskey a go go at Heather and Wendy's. So yeah, Laura gets back to Venice, and at the airport, there's a guy waiting for her, and I love how the name is misspelled on the card. It's not Baxter, it's Baster. Sure. And the guy's giving her a ride, of course, by boat, and she realizes that they're going the wrong way, and he's like, no, your husband's at the police station, that's where we're going. And yeah, we cut back to the sisters and John, and then back to, I think, Laura at the police station, where the head detective is on the back of the sketch of one of the sisters, writing down the sister's address. And she's like, "You don't need this." And he's like, "No, it's not important."
Yeah. He's like, "It doesn't even look like her." He's like, "It doesn't matter."
Yep. It's that exact kind of tone too. And I love it for that. It's like, it doesn't matter. Everything's cool. Everybody is so laid back in this film.
Yeah.
And I just,
Italy, man.
Yeah. You just kind of
take naps in the middle of the day there, you know?
I want to live there 50 years ago, please.
Yeah.
God. So yeah, they give her the address, and back at the hotel, Heather starts kind of having this fit just as John is about to leave. And he's like, "Yeah, I got to get out of here." And he steps out as Heather is crying out for him not to go. And it's a very odd phrasing of that.
Yeah, let him not go. Let him not go.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, John asked them for a glass of water, much like the glass of water he had before his daughter died.
That's yes, also true.
Parallels.
Yeah.
Parallels.
So yeah, she's having this fit, calling out, and he's like,
"It's very scary." It's like I'm gonna mention David Lynch again, because it has that quality of like the more upsetting weirdness of like Mulholland Drive, or the simulation is showing through in like Lost Highway, right? Of just like all of a sudden a character just starts acting so weird that it's just upsetting.
Yeah. And he runs out and just starts walking off to I yes, his goal is heading back to the bishop's place, but we get the little stinger of little musical stinger, which
Mhm.
is very weird. And you see the figure in red kind of scuttling off. Um, and then Wendy runs outside the hotel calling after John, but he's too far away. And we
Yep.
get hurried footsteps, and it's Laura running around the corner. And Wendy just kind of hustles her upstairs. Heather tells her that she's got to find John and warn him. This is where we get the bishop snapping awake and turning on his
Yep.
light and looking at the candle and the little red votive holder. Um, God, that's cool.
Yeah.
And Laura runs off in search of John. And then John, of course, sees the figure in the red coat and gives chase as there's a man shouting in the background. And I don't speak Italian. I don't understand
Yep.
Italian, but I'm assuming this is yet another murder scene that the figure in red is
That's what
running
I've
off
assumed as
from.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
And
there's just like all of a sudden there's all these other people around and everybody's just panicking.
mhm. Yep, and the person in red is looking like they're trying to get away from something too.
Mhm.
Um, and let's see here. Yeah, John finds the figure, calls off after them. You got the shouting in the background. Everybody's trying to climb over all these gondolas in this fairly tight canal. Um, and John gets to this gate that the figure runs through, and he locks it behind him to keep them from
Mhm.
being able to get away. Um, I don't know if he truly thinks that this is his daughter or not,
I think he
but
does.
yeah, um, but yeah, he's like,
I think he's not only locking the gate to keep them in, I think he's also locking it to keep everybody else out.
yeah, so he can have that opportunity to speak with her, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, he locks the gate and pursues the figure. The mist on the ground
Oh my
in
god, it's so cool.
and the fact that he knows which direction the character is taking off in because he can follow the swirling mist.
Yeah.
But it looks so
And
good.
the camera shots are just like you get these weird like Dutch angles like from above and stuff, and you
Um,
just see the mist swirling. It's oh my god, it's so
yeah,
good.
utterly fantastic. Laura climbs over the boats as well and makes it to the gate, but she can't proceed, of course. And
Mhm.
I find it very interesting that she calls out for her darlings, plural.
Yeah.
But yeah, John follows the figure up some stairs because he can see the red coat in this little opening up there, and he hears this kind of whimpering. Um, and he heads up the stairs and calls out to the figure, says, "Hey, it's okay, it's okay." And this is where we get the iconic
Mhm.
ending here where the figure turns around. It is very much not Christine. It is
Nope.
a very much older little person with a knife.
Yep, meat
And
cleaver.
yeah, and she advances on John and just jams that sucker into his neck, and it is pretty brutal.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the exchange that they have where John goes like, "Wait," and she goes, "No." And he
yep,
goes he says, "Wait again," and she just shakes her head and just walks up and just like,
yep.
bam, gets him.
Yep. And we get this montage in that moment of everyone freaking out. You got Heather
Mhm.
back at the hotel. You've got the bishop kind of waking up again,
Mhm.
and Laura at the gate calling out. And this is where John starts bleeding out. And we get all of the premonitions coming full circle. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
every
not even just
little
all
touch.
the premonition, like, because you get all these rapid cuts, and not even them are all like the premonitions. It's also just like this sort of like those repeated motifs over and over again. Like you
Mhm.
see the little boy running over the glass break as John breaks the glass with his feet. This
Yep.
just like this feeling that it's just like the time is a flat circle thing again, that it's just all like just like happening over and over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we get the sisters and the unimportant son accompanying Laura to John's funeral on those funeral barges. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's, yeah, I love that the boys got this super bright red cap on again, with the color
Yep.
red being, pretty big in this film.
Mhm.
And they approach this church and, they step off and, yeah. Yeah, it's we finally realize if it wasn't super obvious before that the premonition that John had seen of the sisters and Laura on the boat was basically them going for his own funeral. And yeah, we get credits. Holy
Yeah.
crap.
This is a
That
movie, man.
Yeah. Oh my God. I've definitely got to check out some other works from this guy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just it's just such like a thoughtful and just well-made movie of just like, obviously the cinematography in this movie is beautiful. Like you
Hmm.
get these like the scene of John like walking up the scaffolding before the fall, and you get this like pivot on the camera that's so unsettling. And the
Hmm.
editing is just this weird frantic cut, multiple things happening at the same time. Like
Yeah.
just there's so much going on in this
Well,
movie, man.
not to mention just amazing locales because it's on location
Mhm.
shooting and it's
Yeah.
just Venice looks incredible. And it's a side of the city that, like we talked about, you don't see that often because
Mhm.
it's the off season, right? And
Yeah. It's like
yeah,
these are the streets the people who live in Venice walk down, not
right.
like the tourist attractions.
Yep. It's very cool. And just so well acted too. It's
Mhm. Yeah.
1970s Donald Sutherland is
Oh, just crushing it.
yep. Yeah. You always hear about, what an ass he is to work with on a lot of movie
Mhm.
sets. And it almost makes that worth it, I guess.
He's one of those
But
dudes who really cares about his craft.
yeah.
So what I had heard was that like at the peak of like Donald Sutherland, and I guess still to this day, was that like one of the writers in his contract was that if he was going to do your movie, you had to agree your shooting schedule. The middle of the movie was what you'd shoot first, and then you'd shoot the beginning and end last. So that
Huh.
way he'd have time to like get into character and feel comfortable before he shot what he thought were like the most important scenes.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, like he's a dude who cares about his craft.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows, that's for sure.
And he's good.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers that he's in the
Yeah,
late 70s. It's
yeah. The the
wow.
the the, the famous gif of the him doing the weird
Yeah.
face.
Yes. Pardon me.
Yeah, great.
Um yeah, stacked cast in that movie too. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, God. What a freaking movie this is, though. Don't look now. I mentioned how it's kind of Giallo adjacent because, of course, it is an English production. It's
Mhm.
got some of the trappings of that style of film, but at the end of the day, isn't quite full tilt into that subgenre.
Yeah,
But it's
and it
certainly
predates most of like
well, yeah, like
the
the
big
heyday
giallo
of
films, right?
yeah, yeah, it was
Like
much
like
more
it's
like
it's
mid and
before most
later
of
70s.
Argento's
Or
big
yeah.
works. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I haven't seen too many. I'm not super experienced with the giallo stuff. Like I've seen Suspiria, and that's about it.
yeah, and that's like a
But
lot of
like
people's
the
gateway to the genre. But
Right.
yeah, there's like
The music in this especially feels like it's
mm,
got that vibe to it.
yeah, I think if you had more from the killer's perspective, then
Yeah.
it would be a little bit more of that subgenre. But yeah, uh, it's just Giallo adjacent enough that it makes me happy. Um, I love it.
Here's a question. Here's a question for you, Joe. Do you find this movie scary?
I find it very unsettling.
Okay,
Um,
because most people like, I mean, when I bring a movie on here, there's gonna be a little bit of a debate about whether it qualifies as a horror movie.
it's
I
definitely a
find this
thriller. It's
I think most people would qualify it as like a psychological or um supernatural thriller. But for me, I find this movie to be really scary. At least just in sitting with it over time and thinking about it for the last couple days. Um like I said, I really love when horror finds ways to explore more unconventional things that like the really scary stuff in your life that isn't because I'm not afraid of monsters really. Like I'm not afraid Freddy and Jason are gonna come kill me, but like what this movie is about, the idea that you'll lose somebody close to you and you'll never get over it. Like that's something that when you think about it and meditate on it, that's horrifying. And like, yeah, this movie scares me, man.
yeah, that you could lose somebody that important and ultimately kind of lose yourself in your loss. I
Mhm.
mean, I think a
That
lot of,
you just never get over it. You never confront it, and obviously, and that's what ultimately leads to John's death in this film is that his
yep,
inability to move on.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
scary stuff.
it is, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, shout out to Don Sutherland and Julie Christie, but yeah,
Mhm.
the ladies that play the sisters, they are
God,
killing it
so
as
creepy.
well. It's yeah, they definitely have you nailed it with that Rosemary's Baby vibe.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah, and at the end
and
of the
like
day, they're even good
those
people
like
too. That's the funny thing.
like they're the good guys. They're trying to save John in this movie. And
Mhm.
like you get those like that flash of like before the fall where you get that like it reminded me of like House. Like the insert of like that flash of light with the sister laughing. It reminded me
Yeah,
of like the aunt from House. Like it's so unsettling.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that we picked this film to discuss because
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun, man. It's do you have any final thoughts on Don't Look Now?
Um I sort of just miss these like old the British style of films, especially where like the film is just allowed to kind of speak for itself. There's nobody, no, the director doesn't feel like he needs a character to explain the point of the movie so you don't miss it, and just that like it's just the filmmaking speaks for itself in this movie, and it's just really it's a really good watch. People need to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, uh, I know you and McKenna with HBO Max have been a little bit more on a maximum ruckus tear recently, but
Hmm. Hmm.
I do know that you have teased there's an HBO Max episode in the works. I'm sure by the
A
time that
couple of
this
them,
is out,
couple of them are coming.
nice, nice. Anything in particular that you want to hype up? I know that some of those will probably be out by the time that this posts.
Yeah, so one that we filmed yesterday was we're talking about Jurassic Park with Braden Charisma.
Nice.
I get to absolutely gush about Steven Spielberg and how amazing he is and how just great Jurassic Park is because it's one of the best movies ever. So
Absolutely.
yeah, be on the lookout at that HBO Max, and then I believe we're hoping to get the Interstellar episode out pretty soon. That one's been scheduling's been a bit of a hard one on that, but yeah, we're looking to expand some of the stuff we're doing with Maximum Ruckus pretty soon, and hopefully that's going to be a a bigger deal than what we're doing now. So yeah, if you're into that stuff, you should check out at HBO Max on Twitter, and then Maximum Ruckus, the other podcast we do. Me, McKenna, who did an episode on this podcast that's really dope. We do stuff together all the time. So yeah.
All right.
Good one.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, and if the people listen to this podcast and haven't checked out your episodes of HBO Max, those are, I mean, we did, my favorite movie of all time, Blade Runner, which was awesome. And then, another Italian themed movie. Yeah.
Moonstruck. Yes.
Moonstruck. Love
not
that
to mention
movie.
the BoneCon episode for Fight Club.
Right. Yeah. There is just us hanging out and talking about Fight Club for half an hour.
Yeah. We even get some dumb close-up magic from Joe. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, man. And of course, most places I know people can find you at Jose Ruckus.
At Jose Ruckus. And then I would just plug at Maximum Ruckus on TikTok. That's MAK Maximum Ruckus. That's where honestly the best content we do goes up is just the TikTok. So yeah, check those out.
Yeah, in all honesty, I have found that I will absolutely get so much more traffic from just little things that I clip out, but I have the worst time actually forcing myself to go through and clip stuff out.
It's a pain.
Yeah.
When you look at an hour and a half episode and you're like, okay, what's the best 1 minute of this? It's daunting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But something I need to force myself to do a little bit more of. Well, we'll get there. But yeah, Brandon, this was a ton of fun. Always happy to have you on. And it's always fun talking movies with you. So I very much appreciate it. Very much appreciate it. This has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.